Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to Trail Talk. I am so excited that you could join us today. We have I'll refer to him as a notable Duncanite, someone who grew up here in Duncan and has a super exciting life very far away from Duncan. And I thought that you guys might find it interesting to talk to Brett McLain. Now, Brett, you have a PhD. Do people call you doctor, or how does that work for you?
Only in formal situations. Most people just know me as Brett McLain.
Okay, then that's what we'll stick with. We'll call you Brett McLain. And you guys, some of you viewers may remember his parents. Now, remind me what your dad's name.
My dad was Tom McLain.
Tom and Judy McLain were his parents. Judy was a beloved fifth grade teacher at Horace Mann. Two of my kids were fortunate enough to have her as their teacher. And Brett, your dad worked for Halliburton, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and so you were telling me that you grew up here, went through school, and then when you were a junior in high school, your dad's work took your family to Egypt.
Yes, that's right. Dad was transferred to Cairo, Egypt. He was in the accounting section for Halliburton, and he was transferred to Cairo for a year to work in the Cairo offices of Halliburton, that being the region of the Middle East where there's a lot of business for Halliburton to do. So our entire family packed up our home and put everything in storage and moved out to Cairo, Egypt, which was a big move from Duncan, Oklahoma.
Right.
It was my first time ever being out of the United States, and the same for my brothers as well. And I was 16 years old, so it was a very exciting thing to have happen for our family.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm sure at 16 you were probably thinking, okay, this is kind of my prime time here in high school. I'm, got a driver's license. I've been looking forward to this, and all of a sudden you're in Egypt.
You just can't imagine a place that's more different from Duncan than Cairo, Egypt. Even at that time, it was a very large, very densely populated city. Very different culture from our own. Really one of the great cities of the world. A city with a great history and culture of its own. So it was a very, very different environment from what I'd grown up with.
Were there was there like a language barrier for you there, or was English spoken enough that there's no way you're going to learn to speak the language in that kind of short period of time?
That's true. The main language spoken in Egypt is Arabic, like the rest of the Middle East, much of the rest of the Middle East. Mm-hmm. But we attended an American school, and English was the language spoken there. And in Cairo, especially in the business community there, English was fairly commonly spoken, even by the Egyptian people. Right from the beginning, you start to learn some words of Arabic, the local language. But for the most part, we were able to communicate and get around in English while we were there.
Well, that probably made things just a little bit easier.
It did.
Yeah. So tell us, I guess, how that trip kind of altered the trajectory of your life.
Well, it was completely transformative. I was always, as a child and a young person, interested in history. I love studying ancient history. I love studying languages. Um, and I probably would have ended up doing something similar to what I do now. But the reason that I ended up being an Egyptologist was because of this trip. In the course of our time there, I became fascinated with the country and with the Middle East as a whole, with all of its history, the ancient civilizations there. And I also came to enjoy the Middle East today as a place to live. Uh, I really came to love living in Egypt. It was a very exciting, interesting place to live. I really enjoyed the culture and the people of the country. So that started me off in the direction of becoming an Egyptologist. It was a long journey to get there. Our family was only there for 1 year. And for my senior year in high school, we came back to Duncan. So I graduated from Duncan High School and went to the University of Oklahoma in Norman to study history. But all that time in the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking about how can I get back to the Middle East specifically, Egypt specifically. I had conceived the idea in my mind that that's what I wanted to do.
And so did you have advisors or professors at OU who kind of helped you,
I did. I had my undergraduate advisor at OU was Professor Dan Snell. I think he might have retired now, but he was a professor who taught Middle Eastern history, both ancient and modern Middle Eastern history there. He and I had a really good relationship, and he gave me some really good advice in terms of directing me towards graduate school where I might have a more advanced study in the ancient history of the Middle East. And so when I completed my undergraduate degree at OU, he helped me to get in touch with graduate programs where I could go on and do an advanced degree. And that was how I ended up eventually applying to the graduate program in Egyptology at the University of Chicago.
So it is a specific area of study, Egyptology.
Yes, it is. You don't find it at many universities in the United States, but there are a few where it's possible to study Egyptology as a specialty, as something that is more specific than just the general study of history of the ancient Middle East. In ancient times in the Middle East, there were a number of great civilizations. In addition to ancient Egypt, there were the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Hittite civilization of Anatolia, the civilization of ancient Persia. There were cultures and empires in ancient Nubia, in the area of the Arabian Peninsula. And the University of Chicago is a pretty unique institution called the Oriental Institute, which is specifically designed for the study of all of these ancient cultures. You can go to the university and study Assyriology or you can study Hittitology, or you can study ancient Semitic languages, or you can study the history of the Persian Empire. Many different fields are represented at the Oriental Institute. So I was able to focus specifically on the study of ancient Egypt, which was my real interest.
Wow, that's amazing that they offer those very specific areas of study. But I guess, I mean, you gave me some information. The Oriental Institute has been around for 100 years. Is that?
Yes, that's right.
And so, to be able to have that institute available and all of these very, train the students for these very specific areas of study within that institute. I mean, what a great way to help people just find that niche that they're very interested in, and then be able to just pursue that, and because then the institute gives you that opportunity, I guess, to go do the research and do the field work.
Yes, it does. And there are not many places in the world where you can study these topics, especially not at that level of precision. And the faculty, the professors that I studied with there at the University of Chicago were world leading experts in ancient Egypt and the other fields represented there. So I was really very lucky to get the opportunity to be there and to learn from them, and to learn the skills and knowledge that I needed to become a professional Egyptologist.
So because there are not many places where you can learn about these areas, was it highly competitive to get into the program?
Yes, it is a competitive program. It was less so then than it is now. I think the way that academic programs have changed, the way the academic job market has changed, it's a lot harder now than it was back when I entered graduate school. But it was still, I certainly felt a sense of amazement that I had been given this opportunity, because it's pretty unusual.
So how long were you in the program before you were able to actually go into the field and begin working, or is that part of the program?
In a way, it was built into the program. I did 4 years of coursework where we were actually learning the language and the texts and the archaeology and the history in a classroom setting. But even during that time, I had the chance to go out and work on archaeological digs. I actually worked in the country of Jordan for three of the summers that I was in graduate school. And then I was in my 4th year of graduate study when I was invited to Luxor to join the Epigraphic Survey. So I actually began my work in Luxor while I was still a graduate student.
Oh, wow. And you've been there ever since?
And I've been there ever since, almost 25 years.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I mean, I think congratulations. I mean, that just sounds like a dream.
Thank you.
I mean, not everyone just really has that kind of a dream and then is able to just chase it all the way. I think that's amazing.
I think it's destiny. I can't really explain it any other way. But I saw what I wanted to do, and I just kept following that, and many points doors were opened for me that I can't explain it in any other way. but I just kept going.
Well, that's awesome. So 25 years. I do you do the same kind of work now as you did when you first started?
I do some of the same kind of work as when I first started, and I do a lot more. I started as a student learning epigraphy, which is the study of ancient inscriptions. And the purpose of our expedition, the Institute's expedition in Luxor, Egypt, is specifically to do epigraphy. We have a group of specialists who do various things for us. We have professional photographers. We have highly trained artists who work with our team. We have specialists in conservation and restoration of monuments. But in order to understand the ancient inscriptions that we're studying properly, you have to have people who understand the language, who can look at the inscriptions on the wall and read them, translate them, and interpret them. And that's what they brought me out there to do, is to be able to look at a hieroglyphic inscription on a wall and be able to read and interpret that and explain it so that it can be recorded and published more accurately.
Right.
Now, over the years, I've been there long enough now. It's like any other organization. If you stay there long enough, they start giving you kind of managerial and administrative duties, and you're asked to oversee the work of newer people that come along. So over the years, I've accumulated a lot of other responsibilities on the project. I oversee our publication program, responsible for organizing the team of epigraphers and professional artists that do our facsimile recording process. But I still go out to the site every day and look at the hieroglyphic inscriptions on the wall and try to understand what's written there.
Right. And so you've been specifically in Luxor for all of these years. Are the places where your expedition, the map that I saw on the YouTube video?
Yes.
So are these places that were covered and people began to dig them up and found things, and now they've been fully uncovered, so they're—
Yes, that's largely true. Europeans began to visit Egypt frequently around the beginning of the 19th century. And up until that time, most of the monuments of ancient Egypt were buried, covered over with sand or debris. There had not been any archaeological work to speak of. But as the Western world became more and more interested in the ancient civilization, people began to go and dig the monuments out of the sand and debris that was covering them. Mm-hmm. So most of what you see, if you look at pictures of ancient temples or monuments of Egypt, would have been largely buried 200 years ago. And it's been uncovered over that 2 centuries by the process of archaeology.
So were they covered? I've always kind of wondered about this. Were they covered because of all the sand and the way the sand shifts and moves over time?
In many cases, yes. The sand and the dust can accumulate over hundreds of years, and monuments can be covered by the sands. Perhaps more commonly, it was a phenomenon where people would continue to live in and around the monumental areas. and they would build their houses and habitations on top of or around the monuments. And over time, that would create a series of archaeological layers that would just grow higher and higher over time, so that after hundreds of years, the monument might be completely covered over by these habitation layers. And you
Wow.
wouldn't see anything but the tops of the walls sticking out.
Wow. I mean, here in the US, everything is new.
Comparatively, yes.
Comparatively. And so it's so hard for me to imagine, especially because of the day we live in, that people would do that with no thought of preserving any of these things for future generations. It was just a structure, I guess, that looked like a good place to live.
It was just a structure. And many of the temples themselves were reused later on for habitation purposes. People would just go live in there because it was a sheltered place to live.
Wow. That's just it's so interesting. I mean, I love it that, people like yourself, that you go to these places and preserve and restore and conserve so that we have a chance to learn. I think it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that people kind of started pulling these things out and they thought, oh, hey, what's this? And, started trying to learn and figure it all out.
Well, there's so much that we can learn about the past by examining the physical remains that are found in archaeological sites. And there are many, many specialists doing that type of work in Egypt. Anybody who sort of looks at the news and is interested in Egypt will soon realize that there are still things being discovered almost every week. That's a testament to how much of the ancient Egyptian civilization there actually was. There's always something new being found. The expedition that I work for really doesn't dig up anything new. We're not primarily an archaeological project. We're there to examine and understand and record and preserve the monuments that are already known, that you can actually go and see. And this is one of the other amazing things. Anyone who has ever been on a tour to Egypt and has gone through these monumental structures, they're huge in scale and they're completely covered with inscriptions and decoration. But much of what you see, if you look at the decoration of these monuments, has not been recorded or published properly or in a definitive way. So the goal of our project is essentially to use the recording, the copying, and the publication process as a way to make sure that the historical information is preserved for the future.
Right. So, you learned how to read and interpret hieroglyphics.
Yes, I did.
So, was there a period in time where anyone who would have actually recorded information like that, they were gone forever, and someone came along and uncovered that and had to, from scratch, try to interpret it?
Yes. The ancient Egyptian civilization died out during the late Roman Empire. So it's around 300 or 400 AD. Okay. The temples ceased to be used. Most of the people in Egypt converted to Christianity and no longer practiced the ancient Egyptian religion. And as a result of that, the knowledge of the language, how to read it, died out. People forgot how to read the hieroglyphs, what they meant, what they stood for, and went on. Their civilization and culture went on in a different direction. So from that time until about the very early 19th century, there was no one around who could read any of the hieroglyphic texts. And then in the first 2 or 3 decades of the 19th century, there were a number of scholars who realized that maybe it would be possible to figure out how to read it again. And through research, very careful study of monuments like the Rosetta Stone, which was a very important inscription that was discovered, these scholars eventually realized that, yes, this was a language that could be read and translated. They managed to crack the code. The most famous is a French scholar, Jean-François Champollion, who was the first to see clearly the entire system of exactly how the hieroglyphic writing system worked, and to identify the language that it represented and to be able to read that. And that occurred 200 years ago. So since the moment of that discovery, we've been building on that knowledge. And we can now read and understand what is written.
But there's really no way to have any idea what the language sounded like.
That's correct. One of the peculiarities of the hieroglyphic script is that it only writes the consonants of the language. And generally the vowel sounds are not written. So we can have kind of an impression of what the language might have sounded like, but we don't know for sure the vowel sounds. It's like looking at the skeleton of a human being and trying to imagine what the human being looked like. You just don't have the complete picture. And as a result of that, there are things about the grammar and the functioning of the language that we still don't completely understand.
Wow. So you mentioned this. I really became very interested watching the video, realizing that there are photographers and there are people who must be some kind of I don't know if it's like a technical someone who draws technically, or they're more of an artist.
Yes.
You employ, I guess employ would be the right word, people with these skills. And that interested me very much, because I thought, there are young people go to school, or, even as a hobby, learn all they can about photography and things like that. How does someone end up on an expedition or working for the Oriental Institute whenever those are things that they're interested in?
Well, it's a combination of chance and determination. I'll take photography as an example. Any archaeological expedition, whether it's working on digging up new finds, or whether it's more of a documentation project like ours, or landscape survey, any archaeological expedition is going to make widespread use of photography to record their findings. And this has been true for over 100 years. So every expedition needs a photographer or photographers. So there's always going to be the chance that one could become a professional photographer working on an archaeological expedition. And the same is true of our artists. We employ a number of artists who have a professional art training background, specializing in drafting, scientific illustration. So these are really technical artists. We use a highly technical and detailed method for making our facsimile drawings of the inscriptions. So there are opportunities on expeditions such as ours for people with artistic skills as well. But it's just a matter of deciding that that's what you want to do, getting the right training, and then finding ways to get in touch with people who are involved in archaeological projects or expeditions, and just looking for those opportunities. But most of the people that work on our staff can tell you just an amazing story of the chances and opportunities that led them to come and work for us.
Yeah. So are they, do you sometimes hire people who are local for those?
We do. We have a large number of local Egyptian staff members who work for us as well in various capacities, ranging from many of our conservation specialists, a lot of our administrative staff running our facility. We have engineers, electricians. We have a staff of skilled workers that work for us on the sites, doing things like building scaffolding or carving stone for restoration of the monuments. So there's a variety of different people from the local community that we employ as well. Our staff right now is anywhere from 60 to 120 people at any given time. And
is that for the whole Oriental Institute, or is that just the Luxor?
That's just the epigraphic survey in Luxor.
Oh, wow. Wow. So the Oriental Institute must be, like, employee-wise, it must be quite large.
Yes. I'd say there's about 25 full-time faculty associated with the Institute. There's a museum at our institute in Chicago, so there's museum staff, conservators. It's a significant division of the university, maybe a couple of hundred employees all told.
Oh, wow. Wow. So that's one thing I was thinking about too, you mentioned USAID Egypt or something like that on one of the videos that I was watching. It was something.
Yes. Okay.
Do you receive grants? Is that how your work is funded? Or
we do. We fund our projects from a variety of sources, but USAID Egypt is one of the major sources of funding that we have. USAID, for your listeners, is the United States Agency for International Development, and it's the government organization that distributes foreign aid to other countries. So we are able to benefit from that because we're providing a service to Egypt, to the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, by recording and preserving the monuments of Egypt. We're able to benefit from grants and funding provided by the US government for work in Egypt. And we also have a large network of private donors, corporate donors who support our work, people who are simply interested in what it is we do and want to be a part of supporting us in that way.
Okay, all right. And you talked about you work for, I guess, the Egyptian government to a degree. So what is that like? Is every group that's there like you have a certain set of their country's rules about things that you have to,
Oh, yes.
protocols that you have to adhere to?
So the Egyptian government has a Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, and that's the government ministry which oversees all of the archaeological sites and monuments of Egypt. And all of our work that we do in Egypt is done by permission of the ministry. We sign every year a contractual agreement with them before we start our work. And that agreement defines what we're going to do, what we're allowed to do on the site. And there are very specific rules and requirements that we're required to follow when we're working there.
Mm-hmm.
All of our work is supervised by antiquities inspectors who are responsible for overseeing and monitoring the work that we do on the site. So there's very close cooperative agreement with any archaeological work that is done in Egypt.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important to note, because I think I think people should realize, just because this from this Oriental Institute, the University of Chicago, just because you're there in Egypt doesn't mean that the United States is there.
That's true.
Doing things, and because that's Egypt's. Those things belong to Egypt, and there you just have this great opportunity to be a part of all of the studies and the uncovering and recording for posterity all of the things that you find. But I just feel like that is an important thing for people to understand, and just to kind of get a good picture of what that would be like.
Yes, it's everything that's done on an antiquity site is very tightly controlled. It's not any kind of a free for all. We are closely monitored and being very careful to observe all the rules and regulations every day.
Right. Well, I mean, it's no secret the British, went in and grabbed things from all over the world. The British Museum, even the Rosetta Stone is there. And so I think that it's really great that all people from other countries, because on that video you spoke of some people from Australia who you worked closely with, and
that's right.
You said earlier that you had to be able to read and speak French and German because
Yes.
of the people that you work with. So I love it. It's kind of a global community there working together to preserve all of this history.
That's right, it is. And that's one of the more exciting aspects of work, is we get to meet and talk with and even work with other colleagues from all over the world who are also specialists in Egyptology. And it makes every day interesting. You have a really good exchange of ideas among colleagues there, all kind of working toward the same goal, which is to study and understand and to preserve the ancient history of Egypt.
Right. So, like, top 3 things that you've had for experiences there, what would you say those might be?
the nature of our work is such that we might make a number of minor discoveries every day.
Mhm.
Um, I have had the experience um, of puzzling over an ancient inscription for days and days and weeks, and finally figuring it out what it says. That happens not every day, but it happens frequently, and that's always very exciting.
Mhm.
Um, and when you realize that the inscription that you're reading might not have been read by anyone for 1500 years, that's a very exciting feeling.
Oh my goodness.
Uh, and you know, a lot of the material that we're working on has been looked at by others before us, but every now and then you come across something that's completely new, completely unknown,
Mhm.
and that's a real thrill.
Oh, I bet. Something else that was on the videos that I thought was super interesting, and you mentioned this earlier, that the Roman Empire took over ancient Egypt,
Yes,
400 AD, and that the Romans put fresco paintings over the tops of the reliefs that were originally decorated these temple walls. Um,
that's right.
that those frescoes have to be kind of great discoveries too.
They're incredible. That's a place where a temple that was built and decorated in about 1350 BC was used for centuries and centuries. And then in the late Roman Empire, at the end of the 3rd century AD, that particular temple was turned into a Roman legionary encampment. And the central chamber of the temple was covered with these amazing Roman style fresco paintings. And they're so well preserved. You have almost nothing preserved from that period anywhere else of that particular type of decoration all throughout the Mediterranean. So both of those layers of information about the history of that monument are equally important. And one of the things we're doing right now is to record not only the inscribed ancient pharaonic reliefs, but also the beautifully painted Roman frescoes that were added centuries and centuries later.
So are there people who are, I don't know what like you're an Egyptologist, they're a Roman ologist or ologist or
Yes, there are historians and art historians who are specialists in that era. That's not my specialty, the
right.
sort of classical art of the Roman Empire, but there are people who are specialists in those types of paintings who have studied them very carefully and who have started to interpret and to explain the nature of those paintings.
And we're probably very excited when they got the call that these things had been
Oh,
discovered.
yes. Yeah, it's always exciting when you're called in to look at something that is your specialty.
Oh, right. Yes, I bet. So if you were, uh, if someone came to you and said, I really think I want to pursue this with my life, what kind of advice would you give them?
Start learning German now, and start learning French now. But German tends to be the stumbling block for a lot of people when they show up at graduate school. So that's something to get under your belt before you even show up. The other thing to keep in mind is that it's a fun and fascinating and adventurous life. Being a field researcher in the Middle East or in any other part of the world, but it doesn't pay very well. So just keep that in mind in your decision-making process. You can do it, and if you're dedicated and you believe in it, then you can achieve it. But it's not an easy road. It's a very long and hard road to get there.
You mentioned earlier, how the world of academia has changed over the years. Do you, like, if someone were to pursue this as like education wise, what are some other opportunities that people would have if they weren't able to get into the expedition, the research, all of the preservation like you're able to do? What are some other opportunities people would have?
It's hard to imagine why anybody would go to the trouble of completing a doctoral degree in Egyptology and all the while be thinking about what other opportunities they might have, because there aren't many.
Right.
It's not something that has a lot of applicability to other career paths. Now, there are a lot of people who do have graduate degrees in Egyptology who are doing something else because of the difficulty of the job market. But I don't think that's the way they set out to do.
Right.
I mean, there are people who have gone into to public relations or the media or other aspects of cultural heritage. There are people who have gone into the conservation field. There are people who have gone into the library field. But you don't necessarily need a degree in Egyptology to do those things.
Right.
So it's
very much more specific.
It's very specific. It's something to be pursued for its own sake, and not because one is looking for some fringe benefits, I suppose.
Right. Exactly. Well, there were I made a lot of notes when I was watching those videos, but I got to thinking, did the pandemic affect your work?
It did. We were not able to go to Egypt and do our work for a year and a half.
Oh my goodness.
So our team was actually evacuated in March of 2020. And we were not able to return to Egypt to resume work until October 2021.
Wow, that was
just because of the world situation and the travel restrictions.
So were things just kind of, everything just stopped? Were there?
Everything stopped on the site, on the temple. We did not do any on-site work at that time. We all had other work that we did remotely or at home. But there was no work done on the site in Egypt for that period.
So are there like people who are security guards who you have to have all these things guarded and kept, I don't know?
Yes. The Antiquities Ministry maintains caretakers and guards at all the antiquities sites who are responsible for keeping watch, making sure there's no intrusion or anything amiss. And then for most of the major sites that are in tourist areas where tourists might visit, there's usually police guarding the site as well, local police, just for security's sake.
Right, right. So I guess they were the only people around.
For the most part, there was not a lot of tourism in Egypt during the pandemic. It did eventually pick back up. But I imagine most of the antiquity sites, the temples and tombs didn't see a lot of visitors during that time period.
Right. Well, it's not like things are going to really change if nobody's there. You're looking at things that already happened. So you're not going to really miss out on things like that. But it must have felt really good to get back at it.
It certainly did. It certainly did. We love what we do. Our team are dedicated. We love being there, and we're very happy to get back to doing field work again.
And so, if people really wanted to, like the YouTube videos that you sent, are there ways that people can watch those? Just general public?
Of course, that's all public access. The Oriental Institute has a YouTube page.
Okay.
And there's probably 100 videos on there of lectures by our faculty and researchers talking about various aspects of the ancient Near East. And that's probably a good place to start, but the Institute also has a website. So anybody who just type in Google, the Oriental Institute, there's a lot of information about our projects and research, information about our museum, for visitors information on the website. There is a Facebook page and I think also an Instagram page for the Oriental Institute where they share information, fairly frequently, updates and things. So it's just a matter of looking up these things on the internet, and as much information as you could possibly want is available.
Wow, I think that's great. Well, we will include that in the comments on this post so that everybody will be able to find those things if they're interested.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Also, I was thinking how awesome it was. One thing that you said, and you mentioned this, you said, every day I learned something new. And I thought, that's something your mom would love to hear you say.
Yes, she would. And I know she felt the same way during our time there. She was very curious and very engaged with Egypt and the experience of being there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I thought that was a great thing that you said that. I thought Mrs. McLain would love that.
She certainly would.
Yeah. So I think my daughter was watching. I'm going to give a shout out to Abby. She was one of Mrs. McLain's students, and she is the one my child who graduated with her public policy master's degree from the University of Chicago, and that's how I found out that you were connected there. Somehow she saw that, and so anyway, thank you, Abby. This was a really fun interview. I'm going to give you credit for getting this thing together. As someone from Duncan, I think that this is so great that you grew up here, and what a way to show young people from Duncan that there are opportunities around the world. There are no limitations except what you put on yourself if you have a dream. And in your case, a very specific, very specific dream. And I just love it so much that you were able to find this career and do this.
Well, if you really want to do something, then you can do it. Maybe a hard road, maybe a long road, but you'll get there.
Right, right. Well, Brett, really, thank you very much for taking the time. I mean, it's kind of late in France for I should tell viewers that you're up late in France so that you could be on Trail Talk today. And that means a lot that you are willing to do that. And I thank you so much. This has been a really
Happy to
great
do it.
Yeah. If you're ever in Duncan, be sure and come by the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center and say hi to us.
I certainly will. I look forward to it.
Okay, well, when we sign off from Trail Talk, we always say happy trails. So until next time, happy
Happy trails to you.
trails.